If I'm honest, like I think there's a lot of corporate stuff, that the tick box stuff, and you've got people ticking boxes like, I don't actually understand this.
Yeah.
So the people that are ticking the boxes going, I'm just told to do this.
My customer wants it, so I'll do it.
Exactly, yeah. But
or
they don't really have a connection with what's going on, or, you know, they don't, it's maybe too overwhelming, but like there is that. I mean, I think, you know, in bigger corporations and companies, they'll be like, right, have we ticked this box? Yes, and all the rest of it. But then again, there was a client of ours who said, like, we use really good electricians, but they don't have a zero carbon plan where you're automatically it.
Right.
So again, it's like providing that solution there and going like, well, don't think about it.
Yeah.
You know, it's a really overwhelming big sort of subject. And if people aren't properly trained in it, it will just become a tick box. But also the solutions need to be there.
Aaron Fleming-Saheed, thank you for joining us. Thanks for coming in, mate.
Thanks a lot for inviting me.
Really appreciate you making the trip. Before we get into the key topic around carbon neutral, carbon emissions within construction built environment, Cycling Sparks, it's your company. What is it, what you're trying to achieve?
Well, in a simplest sort of term, like basically we're domestic and commercial electricians that have been using bikes to get their tools and materials to their jobs since 2017.
Okay.
So that's it in its very sort of rawest form. We're starting to use eCargo bikes now. We've been using eCargo for like maybe 3-4 years, which is just, it takes a lot of the strain out of the work. Before it was just me with a backpack full of tools and on a regular bike. So it sort of takes that strain out of it.
eCargo bike, you'll have to fill me in a bit here, because I know you're in London, I'm living out in the back end of nowhere in Scotland, so we don't know what those are yet.
Right, so eCargo bikes are basically bigger bikes which have a battery assist motor.
Right.
So there's quite a wide range of eCargo bikes. You get like family bikes, you stick your kids in the back and stuff like that. And then the bikes that we use, they have a sort of a large bucket at the front. You can stick your tools and material in there. You can carry, I think the max load's 250.
Right.
And I think with the rider, so you're looking probably at about 70, 80 kilos. I mean, the bike weighs a fair bit and all the rest, but you can take quite a lot. And I have put it through its paces, and like they do take quite a lot of weight, and they perform really well.
Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. So you said since 2017,
yep.
And when we were talking before, did you say 7 years you were doing this on your own?
No, so I started in 2017 on my own.
Right.
And then we took on a member of staff last year.
Okay.
Who's been with us for a year, and we've just taken a new guy on as well. So so it's been me for a long time on my own, but now since I bought the small fleet of bikes, I'm just filling up the spots now.
Ah, brilliant.
Yeah.
What kind of person do you have to be to not sit in a van?
Right, well, yeah,
on a bike?
Like, look, okay, you do have to be a particular kind of person to do it, but there isn't a huge barrier to it, but like you do have to, the weather's always a big question with us, but, I guess it depends on where you live. If you live in a really built up city and you've been in a van for ages and like, you're stuck in traffic for an hour and a half to 2 hours, a bike is a lot more attractive. I mean, there's some guys who would just be like, look, I'm not going to get out of the van. It's cold, it's wet, I'm not going to do it. But the frustration of spending that much of your time in traffic, I mean, it got to me. It used to drive me mental.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I remember once it was still on a normal bike. I'd had a pig of a day doing this fault finding, didn't find it, was really frustrated. And I went home in the rain, and it was raining. It was on a normal bike, so it wasn't an e-bike. And I was home in 15, 20 minutes. And it was just traffic the entire way. And it's still that, not being stuck in traffic is still so much better than, not being stuck in traffic is still so much better than, using a bike is much easier.
15 minutes of rain and wind is better than an hour and a half of misery and anger.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, I get that. Yeah. And two questions. How did it even come about? Right. And what's your overall goal or goals with it?
So how it came about, it's not, I always say this, I didn't have a big love affair with bikes. I wasn't huge into cycling at all. I was just late every day to get to a particular site. It was difficult to get to with public transport. And a mate said, have you tried cycling? And I thought, no way, because I'll die. And it was in London, it was 2016, the infrastructure wasn't what it is now. And I thought, okay, I'll give it a go. And I did one day of it, and that was it. And I was just like, why is nobody else doing this?
Right.
Because it was just so much easier. I wasn't having to mess about with delays or interaction, or like being on a packed train with people, everybody trying to navigate through the stations and all the rest of it. It was just like, okay, that's it, you go. So I kept cycling to site, changed jobs, thought of the name when I was doing one of these rides because you just have time to think.
Yeah.
And then when I wanted to leave that sector of the industry, I thought, okay, well, I've already sort of gotten used to carrying my tools on my back, and I thought, let's see what I can. This is obviously a much more efficient way of getting around the city, right. So let's see what I can do with it. Like do it that way. And we've got a couple of goals. Like one goal is to change and to innovate how things can be done within trades and cities.
Okay.
And to keep pushing that.
Right.
I get a big kick out of doing that. It's kind of like a big sort of like, let's see what we can do with this. Let's see what we can do with that.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking on your product, Roller Tray is something, that would be hugely beneficial to us.
Right.
As more products come out, we'll see what we can use to get on the bikes and to carry to site.
Yeah.
But also, as cities get bigger and bigger and more congested, getting about is getting more difficult for businesses. So on a business goal, it's to negate those issues as efficiently as possible.
Right. Okay. And then at the customer end, or the service offering end, what have you seen? What have been the big advantages or drawbacks? Would you say
for the customer side?
Yeah. So the most people when they call an electrician, they're expecting at some point. Normally late is obviously the joke in it, and you get a van will turn up, then you'll turn up on your bike.
Yeah.
Before we're talking, you said on time.
Yeah, exactly.
So is that the biggest difference that you'd get in places on time?
Well, yeah, your delays are just cut right out.
Yeah.
I mean, you might have a delay of something, but it's nothing compared to like normal city traffic. So the customer gets their person on time. If we need to go and get something, it's not right. We'll be back in 2 hours. We'll use a local. It might be a little while, but it's not that kind of like we're going to go and disappear and come back.
Yeah.
So the jobs are just generally more efficient.
Yeah. Okay.
So for the customer, they just get quite an efficient service.
Okay.
But also they love what we're doing. I mean, a lot of the bookings that we get are because they've heard of us and they love the idea.
Okay. So do you think that the customer end then people are more aware of the climate crisis? I don't really know the correct terminology anymore, but
I think I'm in London.
Decisions?
Yeah, look, I'm in London, and it's like it is quite a it should be a concern for everybody.
Yeah,
but I think simply put, it's like there wasn't an option for them to have that before. Now there's an option.
Right.
So now we're that option where they've got like, okay, well I didn't have an electrician who's low carbon, but now I do, so I will choose that.
Okay.
Because I think generally people want to make the right decisions. It's just that the offer has to be there for them.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Yeah. And then as a bit of a segue into the crux of the conversation, and this isn't something I prepped you with before, so forgive me, but do you think more tradesmen will start adopting this with the advent of ULEZ?
Well, I think they'll consider it more, and I think there will be some aspects of their trades using it.
Right.
I think they're not going to use it for all jobs. It depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about like small SMEs, they might consider it.
Okay.
One-man bands, they're probably not going to consider it, but SMEs, maybe even larger, they might consider it, but they've got to see a benefit in it, and I think that's what they're lacking at the moment. And I think they just they kind of don't see that. I think everybody sort of looks at it like, what is that? What do you do with it?
Yeah, it's so against the grain.
Yeah. And like, and so they don't quite know what it is yet, but I think as time goes on, and basically from what we do and what we've been pushing, we've been saying like, look, this is what you can do with it. I think there's definitely like a possibility for more people to do it.
Okay.
Definitely. But they would have to figure out how it works for their business. Now I've worked out how it works for my business, our business, but they would have to spend the time to work it out for them.
Right. Well, you were part of the London Economy Committee, which was back end of 2022. Yeah. So if you could just bring people up to speed on what that was about and what the aim was. Right,
so that was in sort of joint with TfL and Will Norman, who's the Walking and Cycling Commissioner of London, who I hadn't met before. So I was invited in by a group called MP Smart Travel, and they basically, because we're a trades company, normally in bike and eCargo bike stuff, there's mainly logistics and deliveries.
Yeah.
So we have a slightly different voice in that. So our perspectives are slightly different.
Okay.
and it was a great experience. It was really, great to be involved in that.
Yeah, it was really interesting to watch. I've got to say, really interesting. We'll put the link in the description.
So, yeah, great. Yeah. No, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah. It was, I was chuffed to be in it. It was like, it was in City Hall. It was like, okay. But it was basically about TfL trying to come up with an eCargo bike strategy.
Right.
So, look, how are eCargo bikes going to fit into the City of London? How are you going to accommodate businesses using it? And how is that going to look? What's that going to look like and how's it going to work?
Right.
So it's essentially like them coming up with a strategy for that. Largely popular from the political representative side. A lot of people were up for it.
Yeah.
A lot of people excited about it. But it's still a growing industry as such. I mean, again, we're on the trade side of it, so we're not really in logistics, but there's more work going on to sort of establish that within cities. There's a lot of stuff going on in London and outside, actually.
Okay.
To sort of see what you can do with eCargo for logistics, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, like I said, that was it December 2022, that conversation?
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
So it's over a year ago now. Have you seen any impacts off the back of that, and have you been involved in any further discussions?
I've been involved in some discussions with it because we always get invited to these things because we do have a slightly different perspective.
Yeah.
Because we are coming at it from a trades angle, but you see a lot more cargo bikes in London now as a result of it. You've got big companies like Amazon got involved after that, so they've started using the four-wheeled things, which I don't actually think are cargo bikes, but it's just quite controversial. But but there is a drive to do that. There is a little bit. This is me being a bit cynical. There's a little bit of greenwashing with some companies, but
right.
On the whole, it's generally quite positive.
Yeah. I
mean, the biggest sort of hurdle to that is actually how well people ride. That's the biggest lack in that. So you've got. The more people, if anybody is thinking about, I'm going to get an eCargo bike and do what he does, like your riding's got to be impeccable.
Right, okay.
So you can't ride badly. So it's like having a van with your name on the side. So it's that amount of responsibilities on it. You've got to ride impeccably. And everybody makes mistakes, but you don't want to be riding around causing problems. So, that kind of rush to everybody's going to use eCargo, it's like it comes with caveats. You have to consider it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's brought us nicely onto the, excuse me, I suppose that the key question in this discussion, which is, what's your view on the carbon footprint of the construction industry and the wider built environment, and then also, what are your thoughts on the UK's net zero targets?
Well, I mean, the level of work that we do. We're not really brought into obviously carbon footprint is a massive issue, generally speaking, but if we get a design, that's not really down to us. I mean, that's down to appliances. I think, what a customer specifies what appliance they want and what that appliance's power consumption is going to be. So we have to design to that.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, I think on the bigger sites, it's kind of othered.
Okay.
You'll do your site induction and they'll go like, waste management's really important in the environment, but once it's gone in the bin, it's forgotten about. Nobody really thinks about it, where it goes or what happens to it. And I think there's a real lack in connection with what we're using and doing every day. Everybody just chucks stuff away.
Okay. Do you think that's limited to the construction industry?
No. That's I mean, look, I didn't want to get too much into it, but we're quite privileged here in the West. Those raw materials don't come out of our countries anymore, so they're coming out of countries we don't have any connection to. So it's very labour intensive.
Yeah.
And all that stuff gets here. And as a company, there's not a lot we can do about that right now because we don't have that much of a say so. But what can we do after that point? What's the best thing that we can do? And as Cycling Sparks, okay, well, we'll transport in the most low carbon way possible.
Right.
That's, you've got to start thinking this 2-tier way just because it comes in. So I'm messing up a bit. But you've got to think, you've got to have more of a connection where things are coming from, essentially.
Yeah.
And what's involved in getting it out of the ground.
Yeah.
To where you're using it.
So really and I know you mentioned this before we started recording, but, and you said quite rightly, by the way, that if the lower carbon products aren't available,
yes,
what are you supposed to do with
exactly
in your position?
Exactly. I think this is, manufacturers really need to take it up a notch with bioplastics and stuff like that. They really need to look for strong workable solutions for that. Because if the products are there, much like my customers, I'll give it a go. I'll try it.
Okay.
And if it works just as well as the previous product, then I'll use it. But it's very little of it. I know Vargo did their green line recently with their connectors, and I think it's supposed to use a certain amount of less plastic and it's supposed to perform the same. But that's the only thing I've really seen.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not really any fan manufacturers or there's one of the things I just saw massive waste on was packaging.
Yes.
So I was fitting a load of emergency bulkheads once. It's just before I left to start Cycling Sparks, and it came in a box. And inside were little boxes, and they were covered in plastic.
Yeah.
And then I opened that, and then that was covered in plastic. And then the bulkhead came in 2 bits, that was covered in plastic. And it was just like, this is such a massive waste. I'm not saying it doesn't look good, the product, but we don't need to be doing it like this anymore.
Yeah.
You've got to start thinking differently about it.
Yeah, I really do agree. And look, this discussion isn't. We haven't chosen this topic because Metpro is this beacon of carbon neutrality. We do offset our domestic emissions.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're doing that because we know we have a responsibility. You can't ignore it. But we're not blind to the fact that we are in a position to perhaps do more.
Yeah.
So it is on the agenda to start looking at alternative materials and packaging, like you say. That's something we've discussed before. And is also on the agenda. So we're now looking to move forward with a dedicated internal committee.
Okay.
Our carbon reduction plan is going to be
right.
properly thought out at director level and give us some key action points to milestones to hit in as we progress forwards to our ultimate goal, which is needs a bit of defining as well. So we have got work to do. But what I like about this conversation is that we're sat here now, contractor and manufacturer, and you're telling us what you think, how we can help this particular situation, which people will not be quiet about, justifiably. And I think that's one factor that's been missing is that traditionally we wouldn't speak to you. We would speak to the wholesaler who then speaks to you.
Yeah.
So I think having this dialogue throughout the supply chain means that we can go and is more of an impetus for us to go and start looking at alternatives, because then we can talk to you. We're not going to sell it to you, but we can talk to you, understand the demand, see if it works, do some on-site, real world testing, in the hopes that kind of drives adoption quicker.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, because I've said this so many times on this as part of these discussions, and privately as well. We are an industry, I think, that is quite rooted in tradition. Yeah. And we don't, when innovation comes along, it's why it's so hard for us to really get these innovations out there. And we do get a bit of flack for it, mainly around that you're removing skills from the job. But then when we talk to people about it, it's like, well, what are people on about? Yeah. So there seems this just, I don't know.
Well, there's a certain amount of cynicism about what we're doing within the industry. I mean, actually,
really?
Yeah, well, there was. I mean, I have to say less so now. People are generally quite supportive of it.
Good.
Like, of what we're doing. But there was a big move like, well, how you can do this, how you can do this. Now it won't work and all the rest of it. But, it's that kind of, you have to see it through.
Yeah.
You can't just have an idea and go, they said it was rubbish and then that's it, I'm not going to use it. It needs to develop and grow and, refine.
Absolutely. It's like real work. We've got to do some real work. And I know that we touched on this beforehand as well. But I do personally get the feeling in the climate conversation, and in other conversations. I mean, data was one that we've spoken about before, product data. There seems to be, it's a bit, I'm not looking to cause issues, but this is my personal opinion. So it's not necessarily the opinion of Metpro, but it seems to be a bit virtue signaling, like we need to do that to tick a box, and then we can get this credential and life's good.
Well, I think, if I'm honest, I think there's a lot of corporate stuff, that the tick box stuff, and you've got people ticking boxes I don't actually understand this. Yeah. So the people that are ticking the boxes going, I'm just told to do this.
My customer wants it, so I'll do it.
Exactly, But they don't really have a connection with what's going on, or, they don't, it's maybe too overwhelming, but there is that. I mean, I think, in bigger corporations and companies, they'll be like, right, have we ticked this box? Yes, and all the rest of it. But then again, we sort of there was a client of ours who said, like, we use really good electricians, but they don't have a zero carbon plan where you're automatically it.
Right.
So again, it's like providing that solution there and going like, well, don't think about it.
Yeah.
You know, it's a really overwhelming, big sort of subject. And if people aren't properly trained in it, it will just become a tick box. But also the solutions need to be there.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I do, and I do think educating people on it is so vital. I mean, I hate talking about things that I don't understand fully. So I'll always try and hold off. And I need to, as a caveat for myself, really, as a disclaimer on this one, I'm not the most au fait with climate control.
Yeah.
I tend to get the information from news channels, and then other people have heard. So there's I've got to put some impetus on myself to go and understand it better. But okay. Would you say, or how much would you say emissions are considered during pre-build phases, design, procurement?
Again, from our level, I don't know, if somebody's doing a loft conversion and it's like, no, not really.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, like, it's not really massively concerned. Like, there's not a huge sort of consideration for it. But also the problem that we have at the moment is a cost implication for it. I spoke to a friend of mine who's an architect who was like, everybody wants a passive house until you see how much it costs.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, okay, we can't really do that. So, if you really want it, you've got to pay for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's difficult for people to sort of comprehend. And like, I think the will is there. It's just when they're looking at the bill, it's difficult. And again, for us, there's not, I mean, look, LED lighting's a massive, that's probably been the biggest thing in, 10, 15 years of like everybody switching over to LEDs and a massive, and the efficiency and the reduction in power usage through that. Solar and PV's, growing, which is good.
Yeah.
That's rightly so. But we're in London, so again, not much of a call for it. So I think the will is there. I think cost is the biggest issue at the moment.
Yeah, because people have got to live, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Like, not everybody can afford to put solar panels in or even go and switch over to LEDs, like you've said.
Exactly, yeah. So there is, I think that's a barrier that sort of, I mean, they need help, essentially. Yeah. The subsidy should come back.
Well, this is, I mean, I have listened to some stuff recently in preparation for this conversation, and the one argument that I've heard over and over again for the best way to address the climate crisis is to improve social mobility. Because right now, if you start talking with the cost of living crisis, you talk to people about, or you try and bludgeon people with, you need to do this to save the planet, but they're thinking, but all I want to do is feed my kids because that's my main focus.
Exactly. Yeah.
Then how are we ever going to see a mass effective change?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, particularly with PV, it's like, the subsidies that was there, a long time ago, maybe even 10 years ago, was great when you had the feed-in tariff.
Yeah.
And that's a good incentive, and there's a few of my customers are still on it. But
right.
Okay. That would be a massive thing to bring back. That would be great.
Yeah.
And also, what we were saying earlier as well, there's still VAT being paid on reclaimed materials.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, if you want to use reclaimed wood or stuff like that, why are you paying VAT on it?
Yeah.
It's just, that if you remove that VAT, you could, you would take the attractiveness for virgin materials away.
Right.
Because you'd be like, this is cheaper, we can just use it, not paying VAT on it.
Yeah. So, that's true. I mean, even when we're, we want to do things better here, and if we go and say if we printed a new brochure, for example, and we go and look, and virgin material versus recycled, I obviously want to do recycled, but I've got a budget and I've got the demands of the business to meet, and we'll always consider it if it's not crazy, but in many cases it's double the price.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. It's a real difficult thing. Like I said, people want to make the right choices, but it's financials.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the key takeaway in relation to this of how perhaps people can drive a bit more positive change is to do whatever is in your control.
Exactly.
So you can't, for example, control the materials that are available to you to install, but you can choose to not drive a car and use the power.
Well, that podcast which I originally got in touch with you about, who was it? Lee Jackson. Lee Jackson.
Yeah.
When I was listening to it, and it basically was talking about us.
Yeah.
And I was like, that basically, okay, you've got the materials there. What can you do? And it's like, we use a bike. You know, it's not zero carbon, it's low carbon. Like, you know, that's what you can do for it. And so that's what we had control over.
Yeah.
So that's why we do it. It's like, okay, as a new company, this has got to be at the heart of everything.
Right.
It has to be. So you really have to think it like, okay, what are we going to do about this? And this is our solution for it.
Okay.
That's the reason. That's part of the reason why we choose that, is because as any kind of modern business, you have to have the environment at the heart of the main concern of it.
Yeah. So how would you say? I know that we've probably answered this a bit piecemeal throughout the conversation, but what do you think as an industry we need to do more of in relation to this topic?
I think there needs to be more help from the government to encourage and enforce changes within the industry. Everybody's just quite happy making money the way they have been doing for quite a long time. I don't really want to change, but it's going to hurt profits. But if there was encouragement and help from the government,
an incentive to do it, I think that would be a massive help. Okay.
It's a conversation that really needs to be had. It's all very well asking people to recycle, but it's huge, big companies which actually hold a lot of the power.
Right.
And they need encouragement or enforcement to make those changes.
Yeah.
I think education at lower levels, at apprenticeship levels, about the heart of this issue and stuff like that, I think that's probably quite key.
Yeah.
Because I think we were talking before about the old guard and their viewpoints on it. As they retire and the new blood comes in. I mean, I think, to be honest, younger people are really already there. They get it. Like, they totally get it. Yeah. And they're like, okay, what do I want? How can I make this different? But yeah, those are the two things that I think, essentially. Okay.
Well, let's come back to cycling sparks then, just before we start to wrap up. So I know we've touched on the goals that you've got for it, but what's next? What's the next step, do you think?
It's a good question.
Or the next pedal?
Well, no, I mean, like, I just want to continue. We've got two really good sparks with us at the moment.
Yeah.
Sam and Marcus, and they got really good backgrounds. And truth be told, I'm not on the tools that much anymore because I'm running the company.
Right.
So I'm doing a lot of the back of house stuff, but just to continue to grow that and to provide services with the fleet that we've got and beyond, essentially. I mean, I'd like to see quite a lot more people on bikes, working for us. It's just, how do we get there? How do we get that business? How do we get, how do we diversify the market? I guess that's what a business person would say. But it's just the introductions to different markets for us. Because I think the problem with us at the moment, people sort of see us as a really nice feel-good story.
Right. Okay.
They don't really see us as real electricians. They're like, oh well, they're just changing light bulbs and all that. So it's like, no, we can do. We do real work. It's just people don't really see that side of it at the moment. And I've always been quite firm in going like, no, it's got to be real. We can't just be this
gimmick.
Yeah. I mean, that's literally the way I've always been. I was like, no, we've got to. It's the reason why we bothered, getting accredited with NAPIT and getting insurance and all the rest of it. Mentioning no names, there have been people in the past who've wanted to do handyman or tradesman stuff on a bike, and they just wanted to stay under the radar. Yeah. Because they didn't want to be insured and pay tax and all the rest of it. Okay. Whereas we're legit. Yeah. And so I think getting away from that, it's just a feel-good story thing is quite important for us.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. Yeah. Have you seen, because you said you were traditional, before this, in the more traditional sense, you were in a van and, doing your job. I
did have a van many, many years ago, yeah.
Right.
And man, I was not happy.
No, and that was pre-ULEZ, right?
That was a long time ago. I think that was 2009, 2010. I was working for SSE. I was doing pack tests at the time, much of the bane of my existence. But yeah, man, I loathed it. I was just get in this thing and I'd be like, right, you'd plan your day out and go, okay, it's telling me this now. The sat-nav's telling me this. It's going to take this long. You get in the car and it says something different already, and you're like, right, what's happened? And invariably, it's always something really stupid that's happened, a slight bump in Rotherhithe Tunnel or Blackwall Tunnel or something like that, and the whole tunnel's shut, and you're like, Christ. And then you're just pent up with this anger all day, and then you get to your job late, you're in a bad mood, and then you do your job, and you got to do it all the way back as well. And it was just I didn't last long in a van, to be fair. I mean, to be honest, I just use public transport a lot.
Right.
But like, I think I had a van for about a year, but I didn't. I mean, it's not fun in London.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's just, I'm not against driving. It's just doing it in a city just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
No.
In a built-up city, it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
When you've got so many potential obstructions. I mean, on top of the, fender benders, you've got people just walking in the street.
Yeah.
Just stop oil.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you've got, you've got. I mean, I don't go to London that often.
Yeah. Why not?
It's really far away. It's like 800 miles away. But and then you've got roadworks just constantly.
Yeah, I mean,
everyone's angry as soon as the lights flick to green. The horns are going.
Jesus, yeah.
Stresses me out.
I mean, that's one thing. Like when I started riding a bike, I was like, my mental health just massively improved.
I was just going to ask you about that.
Yeah, it's huge. It's massive. I just used to, I used to finish work. I'd be like, right, that's my day done. I'm going to hop on the bike. I mean, and then just ride home, and that was it. And I just used to get the day out of my way, and that was it. And also, in the morning, it was on site for 7:30. You're fresher than everybody else.
Yeah.
Because everybody else is like, drinking like Monster or whatever. And like, you're just like, hey, yeah, what's going on? Yeah, great. Yeah. Okay, yeah, let's go for it. So at the start of my day, at the end of my day, it was a really, really good thing. It was great. I really do. If you can cycle to your site and you're working on site, do it. Just give it a go. That's what I would say.
There you go.
Yeah.
You heard it from the man himself.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I do just a little disclaimer as well. Aaron hasn't been paid to come here today to prop up roller tray. It's just a really good product.
Yeah, well, actually, I mean, we haven't used it yet, but I'm really keen to use it. But it looks great, and when I saw it, I was like, that's ideal for us because it's exactly what we need.
Okay.
And it's like as products get better, like we were talking about before, and companies start thinking about, okay, how can we make this different rather than just having long lengths, 3 meter lengths? It's like, great, okay, now we can install tray. And everybody's like, what are you going to do with 3 meters of tray on the bike? It's like, well, now we use that.
Brilliant.
It's great.
So you're keen on it. You want manufacturers
to
innovate. You want wholesalers to push those innovations.
Absolutely, yeah. We need it. You need, it's a group effort, It's not just one sector. It's everybody doing it at the same time. And I think out of that group effort, I think you can get some really interesting things going.
Brilliant. Oh, excellent. Okay. The last couple of questions we always ask everybody.
Go on.
So the first one is, what do you think is or are the greatest opportunities for electricians or the industry right now?
Well, it's storage, isn't it? It's batteries and storage and PV
right.
at the moment. I mean, we're quite far behind here. And I think that's probably the greatest. I mean, again, I'm just talking about London, but I guess outside and beyond. I just encourage everybody to get off the grid.
Right. Okay.
Just because if you can, if you've got a roof and you get a good enough array,
do
it. Why pay? Like, everybody's like, well, how many years is it going to take? It's just like, what was it? When the energy prices went up, it's like you're just going to be beholden to it. You can't, if you're off the grid as much as you can, then it's going to hurt you less.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably the greatest at the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, I know we've touched on it in relation to the climate conversation, but just in a more general sense, how do you think we can work better as an industry, end to end?
I think collaboration, essentially. Like I said, I think if everybody's doing innovation, thinking outside the box and in stuff and products and the rest of it, I think collectively that works. I think procurement's quite difficult at the moment. We're quite a reactive company, and wholesalers don't actually always have what we need, and everything's next day at the moment. That actually goes hand in hand with another issue that's coming up in big cities. But the biggest frustration I have, and I don't think one wholesaler is worse than the other. It's just like a collective thing. It's like they don't have it all next day.
Yeah.
And it's just like the done thing. It's like it's all going to be next day, and it's like, well, I need it now.
Yeah.
So they don't really want to have stuff on the shelf.
Right. Okay.
Another issue that actually needs to be addressed within big cities is basically trading estates and warehouses. Like they're being knocked down to build flats, and actually, if you knock down all those trading estates in cities, those goods are going to come from further out.
Yeah.
And that's more mileage coming in, and then you're going to get guys and vans going out to those areas and then coming back into London. I think the whole city planning thing of it really needs to be thought about. If you have smaller hubs in different places, I mean, it just makes life a lot easier.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing That's maybe not the industry, but that's something that needs to be thought about. Is don't give up your retail spaces like that.
Right. Okay.
For you guys, or TLC, CEF, Rexel, and all the rest of it.
Yeah. Well, we're still a traditional industry. I don't think we ever really won't be, or it'll certainly be a very long time that we remain like this. But it's we spoke with Tony Howard last year as well, and he was talking about the importance of the branch, of the trade counter. Do you like I know you've got your job to do and you need to get back to science stuff, but is that important to you, going in and having those relationships?
It is, yeah. It makes a big difference. I mean, if I have an issue with the company, it's not with the counter staff.
Yeah.
It's with the company generally, or I haven't got my bits because it didn't get delivered, or But my relationship with the most wholesalers was really, really good.
Yeah.
And they do want to help you.
Yeah.
Well, the ones I talk to anyway. There's people out there who are they haven't got a great relationship with their local trade counter or whatever. But most of the ones that we speak to, they're really, really helpful, and they do want to help us.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that communication really helps. You get some that will bend over backwards for you and try and do as much as they can, and it still falls through.
Yeah.
But you appreciate that effort.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. What would you like to see more of from wholesalers and manufacturers?
I would like to see more stuff on the shelves.
Right.
To be honest, I would like to see, then actually look at what people are buying and thinking if they want to get into new markets, it's got to be there. I think one of the biggest ones, no names mentioned, but they do a load of metal work.
Right.
They've got loads of that, but they haven't got any DBs in.
Right. Okay.
So, single phase DBs, because they're not really going for that, but they want that work. It's nobody's really going to go if it's not there.
Yeah.
I saw what was the second question attached to
that? What do you want to see more of from wholesalers, and then what would you like to see more of from manufacturers?
From manufacturers, I want to see more innovation, like the roller tray stuff, and people thinking about that kind of, new products and new ways of doing things, and actually, a bit more of a positive step forward than just everything is the way it's always been.
And then what about the other way? So I know we were kind of going to wrap up, but I'm interested in this now because when we've, again, just going back to the Tony Howard conversation, he referenced a discussion we had with a contractor, and it was Theo Webster. And in that conversation with Theo, he said something to the effect of, the wholesaler may not always have your best interests at heart. To which Tony challenged, what do you want to see from us? So we are good.
Price, isn't it? That's the thing.
Right.
I mean, it's this kind of tentative thing of well, I'll help you out once you start spending more money. And I get that, but that's not going to tempt new business in.
Okay.
I have to shop around.
Yeah.
I would much rather just go to one wholesaler if I needed to.
Right.
But I can't because of the price of things. So I spend a lot of time looking at cost of materials. Yeah. So I'll go between different wholesalers.
Okay.
Because I'm what's the best price for us? But I think, if there is a little bit more than they can do on profit, and cost and stuff like that, then that would be a massive help.
Okay.
Because it's just the time you take, particularly, guys in vans are going, right, I went to CEF and it cost too much money, and then I went to Rexel and that was still too much money, and I ended up going blah, 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 wherever.
Yeah.
That time spent going around is, nobody's really got that time.
Okay.
If you just want to get on and do the job, you want a good price. Maybe not the cheapest.
Yeah.
But something fair is the word I'd use. Fair pricing.
Okay. And then in terms of helping the supply chain the other way, one of the key suggestions that certainly I've heard is if contractors could give us more insight into what they think they're going to, what work they've got coming through, that'll help with our purchasing as well.
Absolutely.
And help your stock levels.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, one wholesaler was like, look, I know you like installing these DBs, so we'll get them in, and they did.
Right.
So that's great.
Okay.
And so I know they're there if I need it.
Yeah.
That's kind of that is that two-way thing. But that's where that interaction really needs to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's all business. We all understand it's all business, but it's a two-way thing. They need to sell it, and we need to buy it.
Absolutely.
So that interaction needs to happen, and that conversation needs to happen as well.
I agree, and I mean conversations like this, whether it's with a wholesaler or with someone at the contractor level, it's invaluable for us.
Yeah.
Because there's so many ideas that come out of it, and it's like, oh, we hadn't considered that. Maybe we can have a conversation with our direct customers about this. So it's like I say, it's invaluable. It's why we put it out, because we hope that, you know, people can pick up their own ideas.
Absolutely,
and forge their own paths with it. But well, Aaron, I think we've had a pretty good conversation there. I think there's been some really good stuff that's come out of it. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, it's been really fun. No, thank you.
If you want to tell people where they can find more about Cycling Sparks,
so our link tree is on our Instagram, so it's just @Cycling Sparks. And our website is www.co.uk. No, hang on one sec. Sorry. Our website is www.thecyclingsparks.co.uk.
Nice. Well, all the links will be below.
Yeah, exactly.
And could people get in touch with you directly through there, or?
Yeah, so we've got a quote form and a press page and stuff like that. You can just put your inquiry through there and definitely come and talk to us.
Brilliant.
Great.
Aaron, that's been absolutely great. Thank you so much.
Cheers, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely.
Cheers.